Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We're still in tax season. Don't forget, we're still in tax season. If you haven't submitted your taxes, now is the time to do so. But today, I'm going to be doing something different. Today, I'm going to be answering the top 5 burning questions you have during this tax season. And these will be questions from when you get your tax returns, what to do during a CRA audit, and any other questions that you might have. But these are the top 5 questions that you probably have during this tax season. So let's dive in. So let's start with the question that everybody wants an answer to, which is, how long will it take to get your tax refunds? And you probably know already, waiting for money feels like you're waiting forever. When you know that you have some money coming to your pocket, especially when you know the amount, usually if you submit your taxes online, waiting for that money, it feels like you're waiting forever. So if you use any of the online softwares like TurboTax, WorldSimple, maybe any other ones that you might use to submit your taxes online, you will probably get your tax refund within 2 weeks. So these days, I know the CRA, they're pretty efficient in processing online taxes. And so if you submitted your taxes online and you've set up your direct deposit, you can expect your refund within 2 weeks. But if you're still doing paper tax submissions, if you're still submitting your taxes by hand, by paper mail in this big 2026, it's going to take a lot more time because paper mail requires a lot more time to process. So you might expect a time lag between 8 to 12 weeks to even get your refunds back. If you're still expecting paper checks from the CRA, even if you have submitted your taxes online, if the CRA has to mail you a paper check, then that 2-week window, you might need to add some extra days to it for the mail to get delivered to you. And before that, you need to ensure that your address is correct on your CRA profile. If you have switched addresses, make sure you've updated your addresses so that your checks are not missing in the mail. Another burning question that most people have is, how do tax refunds get calculated? Some people are wondering, how are tax refunds calculated? And it's a very interesting question because most people think that tax refunds are free money. They think the government is just giving you bonuses, but it's not free money. And I also want to state that tax refunds and tax credits, tax benefits, they are completely different things, right? So in simple terms, let me explain. If you work for an employer, if you're in full-time employment and you get paid on a regular basis, your employer deducts taxes from your income. However, your employer does not know your living condition. They don't know if you are eligible for any benefits, any tax deductions, or anything that might relate to your personal living situation beyond what is already deducted from your paycheck. So when you submit your taxes to the government, and you go in and fill all the eligible tax deductible expenses, things like medical expenses, things like tuition, professional memberships, education expenses, all of those things. And then the government and the CRA will determine the things that are tax deductible from the taxes you've already paid. And they will do a balancing between the taxes you've paid already and what you should have paid. If it comes out to be that the taxes you've paid already are higher than what you should have paid, that is when you will get a tax refund. And there are other things that can help you increase your tax refund. So things like contributing to an RRSP, things like contributing to an FHSA, and some other tax advantage accounts. When you use those ones, you can increase your tax refund. So just to recap, tax refunds, they're not free money. On the one hand, people get tax refunds. On the other hand, people owe the CRA. So another question that most people have is, how do you know if you owe taxes? How do you know if you owe the CRA a lot more money than you've paid already? And I really like this question, and I'll tell you why. Nobody likes a surprise tax bill. Nobody does, trust me. Nobody even likes an unexpected expense, not in talk of a tax bill that you didn't know you'd have to pay. So if your job did not deduct enough taxes from your paycheck, or if you run a side business alongside your full-time employment, you might have to pay more money to the CRA. Also, if you have 2 jobs, if you're working multiple jobs, 2 full-time jobs, or maybe a full-time and a contract job, whatever it is, you might need to pay back money to the CRA. So here's how you find out. After you file your tax returns and the CRA has processed your taxes, they would issue you a very important document called a notice of assessment. What this paper tells you, what this simple document tells you, is your final tax results. It will show you if you have a balance to pay or if you're going to get a refund. And you do not have to wait for this document to show up in the mail. You can log into your CRA My account at any time, and this document will be right there showing you what your balance is at that time based off of your tax numbers. if the math says you owe money, you have to pay attention to the calendar. These monies are due by the 30th of April. You have to remit this to the CRA. If you miss this payment deadline, you're going to get interest on your tax bill every single month. So you don't want your charges to rack up. So make sure you look out for your notice of assessment. And this is your definitive proof that you have submitted taxes for the 2025 tax year. So keep this record safe. Another misconception out there is most people think that taxes are for full-time people and for part-time, or maybe for those who working in corporates or those who own their own businesses. That's not true. If you were a student above legal age, you need to file your taxes, because I know school is expensive, but hey, there's good news on the horizon. So the government has something called a basic personal amount, and for the 2025 tax year, that amount is just over $15,000. What this simply means is if you don't earn up to $15,000, you don't need to pay taxes. Notice what I said, you don't need to pay taxes, but you should file your taxes. That means you need to report what you earned as below 15,000 if that's what you made during the year as a student, so that the government knows that you exist. The government has your records and they would say, yes, you didn't meet the eligible amount to pay taxes. And also your tuition fees are eligible for what is called a tuition credit. So if you do not file your taxes, you won't have access to those tuition credits. And if there are all benefits coming in for low income earners, if you as a student were working a part-time job that made you less than $15,000 in a year, and there are benefits which the government are going to give out during the year for different reasons, if you don't file your taxes, the government won't have your records and they wouldn't give you those benefits. And so filing your taxes is an important way to get your name on the radar in case there are benefits that are accrued to you as a low-income earner, as a low-income student. And if you want to get to the next level, if you want to move forward to the next level, you can apply your tuition credits if you start making more money down the line. So as a student, make sure that you file your taxes and make sure you keep your records of tax submissions handy. Now, with taxes, you always want to make sure that you get your numbers right. Whether you're a full-time worker, whether you're a self-employed person, whether you're a student, or whoever you are, as long as you are submitting your taxes, you always want to make sure you are submitting accurate numbers. And the reason why is there's a very, very scary word that usually happens with taxes, and that is a CRA audit. And this brings me to the next question. People want to know what usually happens during a CRA audit. So if you are unfortunate enough, or maybe fortunate enough, to be picked out for a CRA audit, well, the first thing that should happen is you shouldn't panic at all. What a CRA audit means is the CRA wants to reconfirm everything you have submitted during the taxes. Or maybe not everything, maybe something specific that the CRA would like to confirm that you've submitted during the taxes. So in a simplified definition, a CRA audit means the CRA wants to look at your papers to make sure everything you've claimed is true and accurate. That's pretty simple. And the common cause of a CRA audit is missing tax information or missing slips. So this is how it works. The CRA gets a lot of information about you from a wide range of sources, from your employers, from financial institutions, and even from academic bodies too, because I know that the CPA also sends proof of your CPA dues to the CRA. So if I don't claim those dues on my tax filing, there will be a gap. Now, imagine if you submitted documents to the CRA that do not match what the CRA already has. That is going to create some red flags, and the CRA are going to reach out to you to reconfirm everything you've submitted during your tax filing. Another thing that triggers the CRA audit is guessing and playing around with numbers. So because some people would want to get some benefits that they are not eligible for, because people want to overstate their expenses so that they can reduce their overall tax bills, they then have to start playing around with numbers, trying to put things up in different places that they do not belong to, and everything starts to feel like it's too good to be true. So the CRA will reach out to you to confirm what indeed you've submitted, and this confirmation means you have to provide documents to back up the numbers that you've submitted on your tax returns. And if they find out that you've overstated your expenses, if they find out that you've cooked up some numbers and put things where they shouldn't be, then you would have to pay them back some money, and you'll be issued a penalty for that. So if you ever come up for a CRA audit, make sure you have your documents handy And the best way to protect yourself from any future audit is to keep your documents safe and secure. So if you have an online storage, make sure you have your documents scanned and properly labeled. All the documents that you use to submit your taxes, label each one of them, file them, store them, keep them safe, so that if any time in the next 2 years, next 3 years, even the next 6 years, the CRA comes knocking on your email and say, hey, you need to verify the documents sent to us 2 years ago. You know where to find your documents, you know how to pull them out, and you just ship it off to them and go on with your life. So I've just covered the top 5 burning questions that you have during this tax season. And one thing I want you to take away from this is taxes do not have to be confusing if you take it one step at a time. Taxes are not this magical, scary thing that people should be afraid of. I mean, it can be simple depending on your income level and the kind of expenses you have during the year. It can be complex, but if you do have complex taxes, there are experts that you can use to go through your tax filing so that you don't make any mistakes. If you found this video very helpful, if you want to encourage me and my content and my journey to getting to over 500 subscribers by the end of this year, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and also tell somebody about my channel. I make good content and I put out new stuff every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.